ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, helas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuyak ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitigil, makituwin at araw niya kailan pang ay di matitigil. Luman ang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
And for those of you who have just joined in, allow me to give you a quick rundown of the House rules. We have placed all participants on mute for the duration of this forum to avoid distractions. For those asking questions after the dialogue, you only have 1 minute to ask your question. And if you have a follow-up question, we will give you another 30 seconds, and this is to give way to the others. Questions that will not be accommodated due to time limitations may be emailed to pisa@pldtdsl.net. Let me repeat, pisa@pldtdsl.net. And finally, we want to know how you find this session. So we request that you participate in the poll at the end of the proceedings. Your answers will guide us in our future sessions. Now that the House rules have been made clear, let me welcome you once again to this forum we have appropriately titled, The Making of the New Wave President, organized by the Philippine Inter-island Association with PortCalls as media partner. And my name is Mariel Pliasco. PortCalls, as you probably know, is the only print and online news provider for the cargo transportation industry in publication since 1996. Our organization regularly partners with industry associations to help educate stakeholders on issues that matter to them. And what could be more crucial than the 2022 presidential elections? This series focuses on the vision of presidential candidates, not only for the country, but more specifically for the shipping industry. And to give the welcome remarks we've seen and we've met earlier is the chairman and the president of the Philippine Inter-island Association, Mr. Christopher Pastrana. He is also the chairman of the Archipelago Philippine Ferries Corporation's group, engaged in domestic shipping, trading, training, logistics, tourism, and other maritime-related businesses. He is a member of the board of Interferry, the largest organization of global ferry operators, as well as a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, a global support network of 14,000 plus like-minded leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give Mr. Christopher Pastrana a virtual round of applause. Good morning again, sir.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. To all our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. It is an honor and privilege to introduce the leading candidate for the President of the Republic of the Philippines. He is a man who has served the country from both executive and legislative branch of government. With the current economic condition of the country, we need a strong and experienced leader that will help alleviate the living condition of our fellow men, bring forth economic recovery, and unite our country. A man with a plan and a vision for the Filipino people. Sama-sama tayong babangon muli. Let us all welcome President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And
Thank you, Chet.
to
Thank you
join
very
me,
much. And good morning to everyone.
Attorney Pete, shall we begin? Thank you, Mr. Pastrana, and let's get the ball rolling now and start our dialogue. We have several practitioners asking questions this morning, and I'd like to request that after you are called, that you kindly introduce yourself and the organization or association you represent. To join me on the floor is the Executive Director of PISA. I'd like to call you on again, Attorney Peter Pete Aguilar. Good morning, sir. I believe you will be asking the first question. You are on mute, sir. Attorney. There you go. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Bongbong.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you.
Senator, I can see Mayor Sara here, but if she's around, good morning to Mayor Inday. I guess I have to start the ball rolling, and I have only two questions, Mr. Senator. The first question is related to the recent events wherein the Senate has passed a bill amending the Public Service Act. Under Senate Bill number 2094, which basically defines what a public utility is by enumerating only 7 industries as such. Unfortunately, among the industries excluded from the definition is domestic shipping. In effect, the 60%, 60-40% Filipino foreign ownership requirement under the Constitution in domestic shipping companies is lifted, since foreigners may now own more than 40% under that bill, may now own more than 40% ownership, subject to reciprocity. Stakeholders in the shipping industry maintains that domestic shipping is a strategic industry considering the archipelagic nature of the country, and thus shipping should be left in the hands of Filipinos who are committed to the trade, unlike foreigners who would leave a country in the event of political crisis, apart from the role that domestic shipping plays in our national security. The question, Mr. Senator, is if the bill is signed by the President and becomes a law, and if elected, are you amenable to amend that law to re-include shipping in the definition of public utility for purposes of reinstating the 60% Filipino ownership in shipping companies? Thank you.
Well, the Senate bill that is amending that seeks to amend the Public Services Act is actually an attempt to rationalize all of the different functions, especially for our trade, and of course a very critical part that shipping plays in that, in all of its different forms. As you rightly bring up, as a lawyer, bring up the possible constitutional conflict on the constitutional provision on the ownership by foreign corporations of local businesses. In the way that the Senate bill gets around this is to define it as a critical infrastructure, shipping as a critical infrastructure. I do not know, perhaps the attorney, you could probably give us a better opinion than I could, but I do not know if that redefinition is going to be allowed by the Supreme Court in the vis-a-vis the provision in the Constitution that ownership must be ownership of all corporations that operate in the Philippines must be owned by a majority of Filipinos. And so I think that there is a better way to do it. I think that we have to re-examine that. That will require a constitutional amendment if we are going to proceed in that manner, and that will take a very long time, and it will be a very difficult process for the simple, as we have seen in the past, that any constitutional amendments have been struck down since the '87 Constitution. And so the Senate bill, as it stands and as it redefines the shipping industry as a critical infrastructure, will definitely come under a legislative test, rather a judicial test, and will be challenged, I'm sure. So I can see that the president may allow it. so as to just show that this is an effort that we are trying to do, so that because the problem is it's not only transportation, it's not only shipping, but it is also telecommunications, which may be 100% foreign owned. And that, I think, is going to be very sensitive, a very sensitive issue. We have always maintained that certain, especially media companies, should not be owned by by foreigners, for the simple reason that then it will be a foreign agenda that will be pushed in our media, as we have seen in some of the other countries. So we have to be very, very careful. Nasama yung transportation kasi doon sa telecommunications. Sa palagay ko, that will be the most contentious issue that the Senate bill has the Senate Bill 2064 will have to face. I do not know what the tendency of the president is right now, as to because it has already been passed on third reading. I think we will have to see what the president's opinion is going to be on this. But I think that we are still going to have to face some legal challenges to that Senate bill, and perhaps we can already come up with a better plan than a redefinition of transport and telecommunications as the necessary infrastructure, because it is not actually, in very strict terms, infrastructure to begin with. Infrastructure is defined differently than transportation. So yes, although it is an attempt to free up and to be able to bring investment into our port system, to modernize our port system, so that perhaps we can finally achieve what we are hoping to achieve, to make the Philippines a logistical center, considering our strategic importance in terms of our geographical position. We have become a country of great interest, not only in the geopolitical scene, because of the conflicts that we have in West Philippine Sea. And the conflicts we have in West Philippine Sea are very simply derived from the fact that we are in between the Pacific Ocean, and any shipping that comes out of the West Philippine Sea must come through some Philippine waters, and that is why we have become so important geopolitically. However, although that is maybe makes it a bit more sensitive in the geopolitical terms, I think that in transport terms and the logistics terms, that is a very, very great advantage. Even when it comes to digital infrastructure coming into the Philippines and then going into the rest of ASEAN or the rest of Asia. So perhaps we can, instead of redefining transport as a critical infrastructure, perhaps we should have a program just to develop specifically the ports that we have in the Philippines. And there are many potentials here. I think that instead of trying to change the way that we define our transport systems, I think it is much better to approach the problem head on and say we want to develop our transport systems. After COVID, one of the most critical areas that we have seen that have to be developed and have to be made much better are our transport systems. And by that, I mean all forms of transport. And shipping has particularly become very, very important. As I understand it, the pent-up demand over the shipping volumes that I suppose were held up during last year has now surged. To use the common word, has now surged to much greater level, and that the ports have become very, very busy. And we can take advantage from the fact that, as we have been hearing, the ASEAN ports now have run into problems for the simple reason that we did not expect that demand in shipping volume to increase quite so much in so short a time. kaya't hindi na ma-handle yung ano, they do not have enough truck drivers to take away the cargo. They do not have any, they have not rehired those the workers who had let go, that the workers that they have let go. So skeleton crew pa lang sila. We hear of news coming out of Singapore and Hong Kong and other ports that in and around the ASEAN, that that they have ships lining up, 40, 50, 60 ships lining up simply because they cannot offload the ships quickly enough. So let us not approach it in this way by redefining transportation. Let us as critical infrastructure. Well, I think it would be better to create a program of modernization and upgrading for our ports and consider that a critical program, because it will be a critical program when our economy begins to, well, as it has already, begins to pick up. And we have to address this situation anyway. And if we hope to emerge from this economic readjustment after COVID, after the pandemic, we really have to do much to modernize and to upgrade our ports. And there are many opportunities in that regard. There is a very good case to be made for many ports on in the Philippines, that if we choose to go down that route, and I think it is the most advantageous to us to do so. If we choose to go down that route, there are many ports that already we can, just with a little bit more development, with just a little bit more policy changes, I think that we can develop immediately and become very much part of that global market. We even, it is counterintuitive that the Philippines, an archipelagic countries with 7,000 plus islands, does not have a more developed support system as we see in our ASEAN neighbors. So I think instead of trying to redefine to get around this constitutional provision, I think what we should do is the government should undertake a upgrading program, a modernization program to include all the best technologies that we know about, that they are using now in Europe, they are using now in Singapore, that they are using now in the large ports around the world, and upgrade our own and bring it up to par, so to take advantage of that market that we will have. And also eventually, I am told that the airlines do not expect to come back with the volumes that they used to have pre-pandemic until late 2023. In the meantime, passenger transport will also be undertaken by ferries. We can see the start of that development with the opening of the ferry port in Liloan, in Cebu. And that was also to ease the traffic of Cebu, so that there is another alternative way of going across the water. So these are things that already we are seeing the beginnings of that development. We are seeing the industry responding to the market. I think it would be time now for government to come in and not just allow the market to take its course, but to develop and take some initiatives to develop our ports, and therefore we will be able to be a strong part of the new trade that will be coming in the next year and the years thereafter.
Thank you, Senator Bongbong. Mayel, I don't want to monopolize the questions. So
I have another question, Attorney P. You mentioned earlier, or you're good?
You're good for now. I'm good,
You're good for now. Okay.
I will reserve the next question later na lang to give others.
Last for last. We will go back to you again, Attorney. Thank you, and thank you, former Senator Bongbong Marcos. I'd like to call in RJ Madamba. Are you around? Kindly introduce yourself, your organization or association you represent.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bongbong Marcos.
Good morning.
I'm RJ Madamba. I'm a director of PISA, and I'm also the president and chief operating officer of Lorenzo Shipping Corporation. Our company is under the umbrella of Magsaysay Shipping and Logistics. Now, for my question, this is regarding the harmonization of laws and regulations among the different maritime agencies right now, and the seemingly overlapping authorities between Marina or PPA, Philippine Ports Authority, PCG, Philippine Coast Guard, Office of Transport Security or OTS, and CPA, Cebu Port Authority. This is the matter regarding the conflict of interest in the PPA's developmental and regulatory function. I think it should be resolved in as much as the existing PPA role as a government-owned corporation in terms of getting concession fees or a share from PPA ports. And they're also the regulatory body in terms of bidding out on the port concessions under PTMRF or the developmental and management contracts. We believe that it unnecessarily compounds the cost of handling cargoes and increases the cost of doing business at the ports, which is eventually passed on to the consuming public. To put it simply, PPA is both a regulatory body by the government, and at the same time, they get a share from the port operators. So seemingly, there's sort of a conflict of interest there. So do you think there is a need to redefine the PPA's function?
There is a need to streamline or to rationalize, let's put it that way, the regulations, the laws, the regulations among all the maritime agencies, the agencies you mentioned, Marina, PPA, Coast Guard, OTS, CPA, all of these have functions that have been mandated to them, and there are, as the years have gone by, have been many areas where there is commonality. In other words, there's conflict. To begin with, I believe that the PPA should be a purely regulatory and policy making body. I think you rightly mentioned that there is a conflict of interest in that they are also policy making, and also they have a developmental function, which might be seen and has been seen as a conflict of interest. Perhaps we should return fully to DPWH, the function of the building of the ports and the upgrading of the ports. However, that is only in terms of the actual physical construction. What really needs to be done is that we have to have also to supervise the construction of that, because DPWH does not necessarily have the experts when it comes specifically to the building of ports, or in our case, what we are planning to do is the modernization of ports. The technical part of it will have to come from the industry, and that's what I would like to ask, actually, to turn this around a little bit. How do you think let us say we have agreed that the Public Works, the Department of Public Works, will be the lead agency when it comes to the reconstruction, the development. However, the technical aspect of it, which of these organizations, in your view, would best serve that function? To say to the DPWH, this is the design that we need. This is the design that we need for you to build. These are the things that we are going to have to put in. This is the schedule that will, because the equipment will have to come in at a certain time, etc. So in your view, since you are the experts in the industry, perhaps you could tell me which of the agencies you think should be the lead agency to serve that function, to lead and to guide the technical side of the DPWH construction and redevelopment.
Anyone from the members?
Can I say something, Attorney Aguilar?
Go ahead.
Mr. Senator Marcos, I believe that through the public consultation, and I believe that DPWH can take some of the technical personnel of PPA to be able to build adequate ports. We have very good Filipino engineers, Filipino designers, and I think with proper collaboration and public-private partnership, we can achieve the objective of modernizing both our ports in accordance to the requirements of the shipping industry, both regional and also domestic, sir?
I think you hit upon a very important point. You mentioned public PPPs. That I think is going to be in all our infrastructure development, and the ports, of course, play a large part in that. PPPs are going to be an important part in our economic strategy coming out of the pandemic. But there has to be a regulatory body that comes out of the industry. I'm talking about a purely technical consultative function in the terms of how, because as I said earlier, the PWH does not specialize in the building of ports, and it was really many PPPs in the past that put our ports, that developed our ports from the basic state that they were in previously. So would you then leave that consultative function or that assistance or that consultation, you would leave it up to the private sector rather than have another body or use one of these authorities that we already have, that we have mentioned, to be the technical to oversee the technical aspects of that redevelopment.
Attorney Pete, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, Senator Bongbong. My name is Mark Parco. I'm the president of the association, the Philippine Liner Shipping Association. I think one of the conflict of interest that we're talking about is the regulatory and PPA as a corporation, wherein they are earning revenue for the company, and yet they are the regulating body to make sure that everything is fair, the tariffs are right, and all this. What we have seen in other countries is that this has been separated. One example, of course, is Indonesia, wherein the regulating body has been taken out, and they had created 4 corporations within Indonesia covering the revenue and the operations of the port within. And the regulating body is the one that ensures that the safety, the technical aspects, and all that are carried to the specs which are required. Another example, of course, is you can go to Singapore, which is, of course, as we all know, one of the leading ports in the world. And what they have done is they had the same problem we had. It was called the Port of Singapore Authority, PSA. But currently, PSA is no longer Port of Singapore Authority. PSA Corporation is just that, just PSA. PSA doesn't mean anything now. And they have moved the regulatory function to the MPA, the Marine and Ports Authority. So I think that is one of the issues that we are trying to bring up, that the regulating body which approves the tariffs and of course the safety and the technical cannot be the same revenue generating, because if not, then whenever they request for an increase, of course it will be approved. So there's no check and balance since they are the ones who are doing this. Of course, what we're requesting is has to be separated, whether PPA as a corporation becomes not part of the authority, but a port corporation, or in what happened in Singapore, the technical part becomes part of Marina. That's also possible, and it could be specialized. And of course, the construction can still be done by DPWH. Thank you, sir.
Well, that's clear enough. That, as you say, there's no check and balance, so that should be those functions should immediately be separated. I think because it is a corporation, the conflict of interest is clearly the profit motive of any corporation, government owned or otherwise. But it's a profit motive, so okay, they need to show that the corporation is functioning properly. However, if they are also making the regulations, then it would be like it would be like a corporation, a government-owned corporation operating in an industry and making also the regulations for that industry. And so, yes, I can see how that could be a problem. So I think perhaps we should return it once again. Perhaps PPA should go back to its primary function of being a regulatory body rather than a government-owned corporation. So there needs to be a body somehow by a governmental body that monitors and regulates the functions, the operations, and also provides policy as to how to handle the industry. So that is very clear. So we agree in that the PPA's conflict of interest derives from its nature as a corporation, government-owned corporation. So that is immediate. That is an immediate thing that we will have to fix. That is something that does not really make sense. I think what happens is that the laws and the regulations evolve over time, and patong-patong na yung mga regulations, patong-patong na yung mga batas. Before you know it, we have these contradictions. So let us re-examine. We have to codify once again. We already talked about the PS. We talk about the PSA. We have to talk about all of the other also we have to include into that discussion the regulatory bodies that are involved in shipping in our country. So thank you for that. That was I needed to hear from the experts as to what would be the best solution and the best strategy to attain this role, to be able to play this role in our shipping in the global economy.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Marielle, who's the
Yes.
next?
And thank you, Mr. Mark Barco. At least you're able to join us from so many miles away. Mr. RJ Madamba, are we good? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Marcos. And just as a final note, PISA members are more than willing to help collaborate in the development of our ports, because we're the primary users of the ports. So
Correct.
we're the best people to ask for advice, and we're more than willing to
Absolutely.
help.
That's absolutely true. The shipping industry is a long-standing one in the Philippines. We have been seafarers since ancient times, and we have played a very large part in international shipping. And we are an archipelagic country. That's why I guess it's not only inter-island shipping, but all the shipping that the Philippines is involved in should be playing a much larger part in our economy. We see what Singapore has done. We see what the great ports, Rotterdam, London, now Qingdao has become, I think, the largest one now. But even in our local setting, we see immediately the upsurge. What happened in Cebu since the port there was developed a long time ago. Cebu has economically boomed. This we can do in other parts of the country as well.
Thank you.
The part that the industry leaders will play is going to be a very large and important one.
Thank you. We can proceed. I just want to remind all those asking questions, kindly try to summarize and keep it short in order for us to give way to the others who have already typed some questions in the chat box, I believe. Next in line, I'd like to call in Mr. Joel Go.
Hello.
Mr. Go, hello. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sir Bongbong.
Good
You
morning.
have
Good morning.
mentioned earlier, sir. Sorry. Joel Go from Oceanic Container Lines. I'm the president and CEO, also a member of PISA and PLSA. Good morning po, sir. So you have mentioned earlier with regards to the infrastructure and modernization of our ports. And my question is with regards to the how to do it. Okay, so the question is, what reforms are needed to unlock investment potential and encourage greater private sector participation in the provision of port infrastructure? What discourages investments in infrastructure is the lack of commitment to a long-term plan and the rules of the game, basically the execution of the plans. In addition, the practice of having presidential appointments in many positions in the offices of the DOTR makes long-term planning very tedious and difficult. Okay, sir, if elected, how do you propose to improve long-term planning and execution of those plans to encourage investments in the infrastructures of the ports? No? Secondly, how do you plan to choose the heads of agencies, particularly of DOTR, sir?
Well, to answer the last question first, we find somebody who is the most experienced and who understands the industry and is in accordance with our plans for redevelopment, for redevelopment of our ports. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. It does not only involve the port development. The problem of the changing of the laws, changing of the rules. In fact, in the PPPs, as that we talked about earlier, there is always a requirement for a so-called legislative guarantee, which merely means that you will not change the law in the middle of the project and suddenly make it unprofitable for the private sector partner, or make it non-viable, make the project non-viable because of the changes that have been made by legislation. So those are the things that have been affecting all foreign direct investment in the country. In fact, even local investment. That's why such investments as port development, which are capital intensive investments. We are not getting that capital intensive investment simply because the laws and the regulations sometimes change, and in the view of those investing corporations, that they are arbitrarily changed for political reasons, and that is always been a problem for us. So let us learn to provide those legislative guarantees that the operators need to have, so that they can have a long-term commitment to the country, and we will not get it otherwise. Now, I think before that, we have to decide on how we approach. As you see, we talked about the PSA earlier. That is one approach to try and redevelop and to reinvigorate the port system, modernize really the port system. But I think what we need to do is to come up with a plan and to make specific sites. Sabihin natin, we will prioritize let us say the ports that already have some infrastructure. They already have transportation going in and out of the ports. They already have the manpower to handle larger ships. And then let us say we'll develop Zamboanga, we'll develop Inter-island out of Cebu, we will develop Subic, CDO, Tacloban, Iloilo, all of these ports that are already operating. And if we provide the industry and any investing partners, foreign or otherwise, if we can provide that kind of long-term plan, which is what corporations need. Corporations actually, the one thing they look for, or when they are assessing an investment, is that they are able to depend on stability, and that simply means that what we started to do 3 years from now will still continue to be a viable project. You will not change the laws, you will not change the rules, you will not suddenly reassign the people who have been working for years on the project and then put in some political appointees who don't really know how to proceed. So those are the kind of, I suppose you could call them political obstacles that stand in the way of that. So you have identified not the you called it the rules of the game, and that is exactly the problem that we have. unfortunately, I believe it derives from our political system, in that there is always a change of leadership every 6 years. And even at the local level, there's a change of leadership, or a potential change of leadership every 3 years. So this makes things very volatile, and it's easy for new leadership to change the rules. We have to find a way to take away that authority or that power, and let it rest. Let that power to change the policy and to change the rules lie in one body that is following a plan, a long-term plan that has been discussed between the operators and the government, so that we can, as I said, be part of the upsurge in the volume of global shipping. And it will also improve our inter-island. It will also improve our inter-island passenger and cargo capabilities. So it is this problem with because a port development is a long-term development. It's not something that you finish in 2 years. That's something. And then the development of the markets for ourselves does not take 5 years. It takes longer than that. Singapore took them 20 years to be in the position. Rotterdam has been in that position for more than more than the modern shipping has existed. So it does not happen overnight. That's why the long-term planning, as supported by the government, and again with the consultation, with the active consultation of the industry leaders, that is going to have to be done. And that does not apply only to ports. That applies to all our long-term public investments, and that will also apply to all our long-term private investments and the partnerships that we will have between the public sector and the private sector. So these are the things that we have to find solutions for. As of now, there is no simple solution to the political problem of the changing of leadership. Aside from a constitutional amendment, which brings us back again to the problems that were cited earlier on. So you have identified precisely that, but I do believe I'm quite confident that if the government is determined and committed to a plan and supports the plan that has been created between government and the private sector, and to actively participate in that, and to guarantee any investors that the rules of the game do not change, and that there is a good long-term plan that will be viable for operators, that will be profitable for the ports, that will increase the volume of trade in and out and within the Philippines, then I think that investment will come in, and I think that modernization and upgrading of all our ports will happen. So we can take in the bigger ships, so we can start taking in the bigger volume coming in and out. And then perhaps that will be the beginning that will spur the development of the Philippines as a logistical center. Doesn't necessarily mean it will be anywhere in Luzon, for that matter, but we will have to have good ports if we are going to have good ports, good infrastructure, good transportation, good roads. Even railroads are something that all the other countries use, because it's still the cheapest way to move passengers and cargo. So perhaps those must be developed going in and out of these logistical centers. But that is what we have to do if we really are committed to increasing the volume of trade and traffic through our port system. And I did answer your second question, no? For something as complex and important as the transportation, the Department of Transportation, especially when it comes to the port development and the appointments. I think that we cannot start from zero and put somebody who's a political appointee who does not who has very little experience on the job. We have to find somebody who has been working in the industry for a very long time and understands and is acceptable to all the players, both the government and the private sector partners. But I think we need technocrats with this kind of thing. I don't think political appointments are going to be appropriate for this, because most political appointments bring in personalities that come from outside the industry. Then that we need the opposite. We need somebody who comes from inside the industry, who is acceptable to the leaders of the industry and who actually knows and provides solutions to the problems the industry faces.
Thank you po, sir, for answering the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Joel Go. I guess you're good. I recognize that some participants are raising their hands. Yes, we will get to you after we finish the questions that have been lined up for this morning. And next in line, I'd like to call in Mr. Ray Eustaquio. Good morning, Mr. Eustaquio.
Good morning, Mariel, and
Good morning.
good morning to Senator Bong.
Good morning. Good morning.
This is Ray Eustaquio of the Vice President of the MIS Maritime Corporation, and also the Chairman of the Board of Marine and Technical Superintendent Association, as well as the Board of Directors of the Ship Managers Association of the Philippines. And it seems that we are going to the direction of developing the ports to become a logistical hubs, or center of logistics. It seems that we want to become like Singapore and Hong Kong. And the modernization, the plan that you have mentioned, the modernization of the ports, it's one of the plan. But the question is, yes, we have a developed ports, we have a developed systems in the Philippines. We are ready to accept as a logistic center or logistical hub in the region, because it has been said that the Philippines is a good strategic location in the region. That is an advantage in our country. Now, how do we lay the foundation to become to market the Philippines to become similar with Singapore, which is a very small country, same with the Hong Kong, that has that most of the people there who are working, because we have a lot of visits there in the shipping industry, ship management, the ship owners. How do we lay the foundation to become the logistical hub? We have the infrastructures already, it's complete. Then the question is, how will we lay the foundation and to let the customers come into our country, considering that we have a developed system, we have a developed ports, and prepared to become a logistical hub? That's my question, Senator. Thank you.
Well, it is like anything else. We will have to compete with Singapore, with Hong Kong, with the big, especially ASEAN ports, and that will not be a simple thing. Singapore over the years has become the largest, if not one of the largest, if not the largest container shipping center in the world. That is from, as you say, a little country of 7 million people. So we have to compete with such facilities. And again, we come back to the upgrading of our present facilities, and we have to match the efficiencies that the big ports are enjoying. And that is through new technologies, through redevelopment. As we have seen, even before the pandemic, there already was a trend towards e-commerce, and of course, shipping plays a large part in all of that. Now, the pandemic accelerated that trend, and that is why I keep saying that as we emerge from this economic problem or crisis, I think that we will have to look at that, the surge in the e-commerce and how to take advantage. And again, transport becomes a critical part of that. Not only through shipping, but even overland, and being able to process all the cargo that we are hoping to bring to the Philippines. So in the end, it is just pure competition in the market, because there are there's no advantage that we have in the actually there are many advantages we have in the Philippines, and we must exploit those to our own benefit, so that we can present to all of those who are looking for ports to use, and say that wherever it is, but the Philippines has these 2-3 very, very good ports, very efficient, very quick, and we are able to do everything that we need to do in an economically sound manner. So we talk about port automation, the use of artificial intelligence. We have to prevent port congestion by developing the hinterland of the port, in terms of transport, in terms of logistical centers, in terms of storage, in terms of all of the requirements that we have to that we will have to do if we are going to operate the ports properly. And maybe in that way, we lower shipping costs and make it more attractive for the operators to come to our ports. There are technologies that have been deployed in Europe, in our ASEAN neighbors. They now have what are referred to as smart ports, which utilize the best in terms of sharing data, in terms of AI, to manage key port operations. Since it is a highly technical, port operations is a highly technical process. We need all of the best technology that we can find to help us and bring those efficiencies to our ports. It really comes down to that. It is an infrastructure development. It is the development of the human potential in terms of workers who will be able to do the job in our ports, again, to make it more efficient. I am very confident, because as I just mentioned, we, the Philippines, with our archipelagic nature, have great advantages, but it again needs this commitment to a long-term plan to modernize, upgrade our ports, build some new ones if that is what is needed, and take advantage of our positioning, our strategic positioning in the world, especially now that much of the trade of the world is going in and out of our region. Again, it is up to the Philippines to make a commitment to the development of those ports, to the modernization of those ports, to provide a long-term plan on which ports are we going to look into, which have the best existing infrastructure already, so that the upgrade will not take as much as perhaps those older ports that have not modernized. So these are the things that we will have to do. Again, it comes down to commitment by the government for this development, for the development of the ports, the upgrading of the ports. It will come down to a good working relationship between government and its regulatory bodies, and of course private and the leaders of the industry, in the private sector, because in the end, it is government will have to take guidance in terms of the technical aspects, and in terms of the market aspects, the marketing aspects will have to come from the private sector. And on the basis of that information and those assessments and analysis by the private sector, then the government can then put together a long-term plan which will be agreed upon, and we will follow that long-term plan. Hopefully, the political forces that we always worry about, the changing, we will be able to find solutions for that too. So Yes, I think that there is a possibility, there is a great potential for us. It is just up to us to commit to that development, to commit to these new market forces that we are now seeing post-pandemic.
Thank you, Senator. No? And thank you also for correcting that the Philippines is not is in a disadvantage. Philippines has more advantage in creating the Philippines as a logistics hubs, because when we visit Singapore, a lot of Filipinos there are working and experts in Singapore, from shipyards, ship repairs, ship management, and superintendents. So we can utilize it as well. And at the same time, I can see that our Marina administration have some good plans, a long-term plan, which we call it an MIDP, and we usually monitor it, and we are so thankful that it is being implemented properly. Thank you, Senator Bong.
Thank you very much. The question of all of this is really, it comes down to the implementation of a proper plan. We haven't really put together a port systems development plan for a long time. We have just tried to react to certain forces, market forces, the changes in world trade. But we haven't decided like Singapore did. I guess Singapore is the best model in our region, like Singapore did. Singapore, the government decided we will become an important port. And what do we need to do to achieve that? We have to go through that same process. We would like for this to, we will make whichever port we choose, or maybe a new one. We'll say this. We are determined that this will be a port that will be important in world trade. And until we do that, we won't be able to achieve that logistical center, that center for trade. It all comes down to that political will and commitment to do it. But I believe it's necessary, because if we don't do it, may iwanan tayo. May iwanan tayo ng ating mga ating karatig bansa, ASEAN especially, and China, of course. So it's something that we still have to think about, and we still have to finally do and implement properly.
Benchmarking, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, Singapore is our peg. And thank you to Mr. Eustaquio. Before I proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Vice Admiral Robert Empredad of Marina. Sir, may we have a few words from you? Mr. Empredad?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Sorry, sir. I cannot open my video, sir. But
that's all right.
I'm listening to the discussion, and I just wrote in the chat my concern, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for allowing me to speak a few words. And we will do our best, sir, to ensure that your envision to make our country center for logistics hub will be a successful one, sir. And thank you, sir, for allowing me to speak a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Empredad. It's nice to have you around. And let's proceed. Next in line, I'd like to call in Attorney Mel Belia. Hello and good morning.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Bongbong.
Good morning.
I am Attorney May Belia po of Harbor Star, one of the leading towage and salvage companies here in the Philippines. I have a short question po, sir. In 2004, Republic Act 9295, otherwise known as the Domestic Shipping Act, was enacted to boost the modernization of domestic fleet. However, this has long expired, although the train law was enacted to allow VAT exemption on the importation of passenger and cargo vessels. Sadly, the VAT exemption alone has proven to be not enough, considering the rising cost of acquiring new or younger vessels, and not to mention the fuel and ship repair and maintenance costs. Sir, how do you plan to provide a meaningful or effective government financial assistance or incentives to encourage vessel fleet modernization? Thank you, sir.
Well, I think that fleet modernization will have to come from the private sector. But again, the incentives that the government can give, if we have, as I said, if we have a long-term plan, then those incentives and shall we say um, accommodations can be made because we can consider it a critical we should consider it a critical part of our redevelopment and a critical part of all uh, all sectors, the consumer sector, the industrial sector of our economy. Again, we face a competitive market. And we have to make ourselves competitive in those terms, i.e., modernization of our ports. We talked about it already. But now, as you bring up the fleet modernization, but the fleet modernization can be encouraged by government. But that modernization can only come from the private sector because the government is not an operator. The government does not have a shipping line. And so those it is the operators who will have to provide that investment in terms of fleet modernization. But also, I think the market will respond in terms of the manpower development that is going to be needed if we are going to bring bigger and better and newer ships. But I have great confidence in I have been to many of the training centers. I have seen our people, as was mentioned, our people working in ports abroad, and the talent is there, and the capacity and the capability is there. It is just a question of the government recognizing that and taking advantage of that capacity and of that capability. So it comes back down to the government. It comes back to the government's commitment to a long-term plan to bring increased trade into the country, especially through shipping. And that I believe that once the private sector partners will see that the government has a commitment and the government has a plan, and it provides an attractive basis for us to move more strongly into the world trade market, then I think the investors will come, and the investors will invest in their fleets and it will be made worthwhile for them to modernize not only the fleets, but in our case, to modernize the ports. So that is a critical area. Is the commitment by government in partnership with with industry leaders is the most important that we have to achieve. I think again it is achievable because we have very many good people in the private sector that are in the industry, but I believe also there are very many people in government who are committed and realize and understand how important it is that we come up with this long-term plan and we stay with it and fund it properly and put the right people handling it without the changing of the rules, which is what many investors complain about.
Sorry, may I have a rejoinder on that? Attorney?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Sure.
Yes, Senator Bongbong, just a quick one. Right now, ship owners are being incented to modernize, but the incentive is given, more incentives are given if it is imported. So, in fact, we are now incenting ship owners to buy overseas because they get the VAT exemption and so forth, whereas there's no exemption for us to build the ships in the Philippines, where we would want to have those incentives when we build the ships in the Philippines, because that also adds jobs in the Philippines, as the shipyards in the Philippines will employ Filipinos. So it's a circular economy wherein, as you grow the shipyards, you incent them, then the economy grows even more. And this is what Japan did. This is what Korea did after the war. They had incented ships to be built in Japan, which is why they're one of the biggest shipbuilders. Same with Korea. But that is what we're requesting, that if we have a modernization plan, it be integrated so that it's a circular economy. Because if there are more jobs in the Philippines, then there's more people who will spend, more people to go on the ships, more people to buy goods, and more goods to go on board the ships that we have in the domestic industry, sir. So that's what we're looking for. How can we do that? And why are we incenting it to be built overseas when in fact we should incent to build for it to be built in the Philippines? Thank you.
There has been a tendency over the past few years to depend on importation, and I'm not talking only about the industrial sector. We are also talking about the consumer sector, and this I do not believe that this is a good trend, because the value added for all of this remains in other countries, and all we get is the final product, and we do not get the advantage of the processing of these products. The same thing is happening to shipbuilding, where we are encouraging them to. There seems to be a disconnect in again what our policy is and what we are trying to do. Your mention of employment is a critical one, because as we all know, if you ask a Filipino today what they think of COVID, they will talk about no jobs, no money, no jobs, basically. And so we have to find the employment aspect of shipbuilding is going to be a large one, because that will, as we saw with Hanjin before, they are a very, very large employer of highly skilled labor. So it is something that we have to come back to. That is a policy problem. And that is why we have to streamline, we have to codify all the different rules and regulations. We have to codify, we have to define the functions of the different organizations and governmental bodies, or semi-governmental bodies, quasi-governmental bodies. We have to codify and rationalize. As we talked about earlier, we have to rationalize the laws. Again, this has come out of, this has evolved over time. This situation has evolved over time. And it has not been one single rule or one single regulation or law that changed the system. It slowly evolved in that direction, I think mistakenly, for whatever reason. So we have to bring it back, and as I said, rationalize the functions of the government and the deliverables of the private sector. And if we can match those together, then we will have a good plan, and that is something that we will be able to implement.
Thank you. Mr. Marco, are we good? No, we lost him. There's not much time left, and which is why I'd like to remind those left asking questions to kindly keep your questions short. Next is Lars Padua. Are you ready?
Yes,
Lars
ma'am.
Padua?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good morning and
Morning.
welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Senator Bongbong. My name is Engineer Lars Padua. I'm the designated person ashore and head of safety for To Go Groups Incorporated, one of the leading passenger ships here in the Philippines. And my question is relating also to the question a while ago, that as we know that we are number 4 in the world in shipbuilding. However, our ships are built for export and not for domestic use, no? And how will the government support by way of incentives to catalyze the development of our shipbuilding industry, and in order to create more jobs, even for displaced OFW pairs?
I think it comes down to, again, because it was mentioned already, the VAT exemptions. That's why we build ships abroad, or we encourage the ships to be built abroad. I think we have to turn that around, and we need a better incentive package to provide to the shipbuilders and to all of the private sector operators. Well, you know, right now we have a very big crisis that in terms of fuel, in terms of in terms of all of the fuel that we have been that has suddenly shot up again because of the weaknesses that have been demonstrated in the transport industry by the pandemic. So it is again what government can do. The incentives that government can do comes down perhaps to the tax structure that we can provide. Maybe the application of VAT should be restudied. It is very hard for us to provide something like fuel subsidies because of our WTO commitments. What we can do is maybe provide more tax holidays, or rather tax incentives there by reducing some of the collections that we make that are affecting the shipping industry. So it is that I think that is as much as government can do in terms of hoping to build that global value chain. To be part of that global value chain. That is something that will have to be studied again in consultation with the operators, because it is not a simple subject, especially when we come down to tax collections. It will be a difficult subject that we will have to broach in the future. It is there are many conflicting arguments, one way or the other. One being that the government is now in a precarious financial position because of all the borrowings we have done in the last year, or the last 2 years, really. Maybe we can lower the interest rates in terms of the borrowings that the people will want to do, so that they can invest. All of these things have to be studied because, as I said, this kind of creeping regulation away from leaving value added in terms of shipbuilding, in terms again of the trade that we are hoping to develop in the shipping industry, that is going to be that is going to change. That is going to take on a new importance, and I think the other countries are already adjusting, and we have to quickly adjust as well to bring us back to a more rational approach to not only shipbuilding, not only shipping, but also trade in general.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Padua. We're good. Next, I'd like to call in Mary Ann Pastrana. Are you there? Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, sir, Mr. Senator. Mary Ann Pastrana po from FASCAT, and also Vice President of Women in Maritime Philippines. I'm asking questions, sir, for Carmela Villar, also a maritime journalist from Manila Times, sorry, and also from Women in Maritime. Sir, hearing the discussion this morning, I am happy to hear about your out-of-the-box thinking on the review of the Public Service Act, putting the right people in government if and when you are elected, having a long-term plan for our maritime industry, which includes shipping, ports, and of course, people, developing markets, active consultation with the private sector, and making the Philippines a maritime logistics hub, and of course, incentivizing shipbuilding and having an incentive package for a domestic shipping industry. Sir, our concern is, of course, the weak policy right now to support better education and training for our seafarers. We are the manning capital of the world. The seafarers remit about $6 billion in our coffers. So what are we doing for them? Sir, I'd like to also to mention that in the room are students from the Philippine Maritime Merchant Marine Academy, of which I am a student of, and we have invited manning agencies as well, those sending our Filipino seafarers, as well as housekeepers and stewards in the cruising world. So, sir, basically, we want to hear kung nasa puso niyo po ba ang maritime. Medyo kulang po kami sa pansin, sir. Gusto na po namin sanang ma-assure kung kami po ba ay nasa puso ninyo at ano po ba talaga ang plano natin dun sa people portion ng maritime industry. Thank you, sir.
Well, you know, our seafarers have been a large part of the first OFWs, really. And I think the dominance of Filipinos in the crews of all countries all around the world are a testament to the importance of our seafarers and the shipping industry and shipping in general. So I think once we have recognized that fact, then we can proceed from that. I hope that you heard some of the discussion that we had, and I cannot. I think that this should. I hope that this is a demonstration of how much thought and analysis we have put into this problem. And should I be blessed in the upcoming election by the people, then certainly this will be a priority. And these are the plans these are the directions that we have no plans yet, but these are the directions that we would like to take. And I think the most important part is going to have to be the consultation between all of the industry leaders, industry operators, and the government. So I think it has become a one-way street when it comes to consultation in the past years. So I think we have to correct that and listen to you more, the industry proponents, and in that way find this plan, this long-term plan that we talk about, a long-term plan that we can implement and that we will stay with and that we can commit to.
Mariel, I understand that the senator has another engagement, but before he leaves, maybe we can entertain one last question from Mr. Dean Canson. Mr. Senator.
Just one more question.
Hi. Good morning, Mr. Senator. I'm Dean Canson, an active seafarer, and thank you, Ms. Marian Pastrana, for inviting me. Sir, for OFWs, my question is, what do you want to achieve 100 days after your inauguration in the maritime industry, transportation sector in the country, or in the country as a whole? Or in other words, what can we expect 3 months after you took your oath of office? Thank you, sir.
Well, at the very least, we will be able to start the process, because we're going to have to start once again, because what we are doing is we are withdrawing the shipping industry in the Philippines, and so it is not going to be something that we will just go into. We have to study it properly. I hope that by the first 100 days of a potential presidency, that there will already be, at the very least, the discussions with the general points on what needs to be attended to. Now, I do not think that that plan can be formulated in that short a time, because, as you know, a new government will have to form itself. There will have to be the appointments. All of these things take precedence at the very beginning of any administration. But to get that started and to get to identify who are going to be the players and who are going to be the technical experts, who are going to be the market experts, who are going to be the industry experts, that will be consulted by government, and which part of the government will be. Again, we talked about rationalizing the functions of the different agencies. Which part of the government will actually be conducting these consultations? And we must have already a good plan, a good idea, that when those plans are formulated, how do we get them approved? How do we fund them? And how do we then engage our foreign partners to explain to them that the new government has made a commitment, and that commitment is going to be carried out throughout the administration. And that way we will be able to say that we are now open for business. That is the long-term plan. And in the short term, I think we just have to get all of the interested stakeholders together to begin with. and to agree as to what it is that we want the shipping industry to be in the next 15, 20 years. And how do we get that started?
Marian?
Thank you, Senator Marcos, and wishing you all the best. And thank you, PISA.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, and to all of you who've asked the questions. And now to close our proceedings, we are lucky to have with us Mr. Jerry Santos, President of Transbulk Carriers Corporation, PISA board member and chairperson of the PISA Membership Committee, who is tasked to handle PISA Kapihan among its other responsibilities. Let's all welcome Mr. Jerry Reyes.
Okay, thank you, Mariel. As we end this very productive exchange of ideas on how to improve or further develop the local shipping industry, allow me on behalf of PISA Chairman and the Board of Directors, our PISA family and our stakeholders, the Philippine Coastal Shipping Association, Women in Maritime Philippines, and our media partner, PortCalls, to thank you for sharing your time and thoughts with us today. Thank you, Mr. Bongbong Marcos. A blessed Christmas to all. Continue to be safe and well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry Santos. And again, to our special guest, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, maraming salamat po. To all our officers and members, to all our friends, we'll see you in the third series.
Maraming salamat. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Salamat po.
Merry Christmas,
Senator.
Thank you po, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Attorney Aguilar.
Thank you.
See you next.
Administrator Bob. Thank you.
Merry
Thank you,
Christmas, everyone.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and see you all again soon. Happy New Year.